Foundation for Mindfulness, a guide to present moment awareness. Arriving. Welcome. I'm glad you've chosen to spend this time here. Maybe this is your first experience with mindfulness, or maybe you've practiced before and are simply returning in a fresh way. Whatever has brought you here, you're welcome. There's nothing you need to accomplish during our time together. You don't have to become calmer. You don't have to stop thinking. You don't have to meditate well. There's only one invitation: to become interested in your own experience. If you find yourself trying to do the practice correctly, see if you can notice that too. The wish to do things well is a familiar part of being human. We don't have to get rid of it. We just simply include it within our awareness. So for these next few moments, allow yourself to set aside the rest of the day. There'll be time later for plans, decisions, conversations, and responsibilities. For now, simply arrive. If you're sitting, let yourself settle into the chair. Feel the support beneath you. Allow your feet to rest comfortably on the floor if they can. Let your hands come to rest wherever they naturally fall. If you'd rather stand, that's perfectly fine. If walking slowly feels more comfortable than sitting, that's perfectly fine as well. Mindfulness belongs to no particular posture. It belongs to awareness. If it feels comfortable, you might allow your eyes to close, or perhaps simply lower your gaze. Finding the breath. Take one slow, easy breath. Then let the breathing return to its own natural rhythm. There's no need to improve it. The body has been breathing all day long without your help. It's been breathing throughout your entire life. For perhaps the first time today, simply notice. Notice where the breath is easiest to experience. Perhaps at the nostrils, perhaps in the movement of the chest, perhaps in the gentle rising and falling of the abdomen. There's no correct place. There's only the place where the breath naturally becomes known. Rest your attention there, not tightly, not with great concentration, simply with interest. Beginning again. You may notice that the mind stays with the breath for only a short time. A sound catches your attention. A memory appears. A plan for later today quietly unfolds. Perhaps you begin wondering whether you're doing this correctly. If any of that has happened, notice something very important. Awareness returned. The moment you recognized that thinking was happening, awareness was already present. Many of us begin meditating believing that wandering is the mistake. Over time we discover something much kinder. The wandering is not the mistake. The moment of recognizing the wandering is the practice. Every time awareness returns, we begin again. There's no limit to how many times we may begin. Again, and again, and again. If you notice yourself thinking, simply acknowledge it. Thinking. If a sound becomes prominent, simply know hearing. If the body asks for your attention, no feeling. Then, whenever it feels natural, accompany the next breath. Not because the breath is more important than everything else, but because it offers a quiet place to begin again. Remain with the breathing for another few moments. Nothing to accomplish, nothing to achieve, simply this breath, then this one. Perhaps you've noticed that nothing extraordinary has happened, and yet something has changed. For a few moments, you've stepped out of the momentum of your day. You've paused, you've noticed, you've allowed yourself to become present for your own life. That may seem like a small thing, but many small things quietly change the course of a life. We often imagine that important changes arrive dramatically, and sometimes they do. More often, they arrive quietly. One remembered breath, one moment of listening carefully, one moment of recognizing that we've been worrying, one moment of appreciating something we would ordinarily hurry past. Mindfulness grows through moments like these, not because they're dramatic, because they're real. So what mindfulness is? Sometimes people ask what mindfulness is. Definitions can be useful, but before offering one, I'd like you to notice what has already happened. You've been knowing the breathing, you've known sounds, you've known thoughts, you've known moments of distraction, you've known moments of returning. Whatever's appeared, something within you has been capable of knowing it. That simple knowing is the beginning of mindfulness. Mindfulness is not something we create, it's a capacity we learn to recognize and trust. The more we practice, the more familiar it becomes. Not because awareness grows stronger, but because we become more willing to rest in it. Everything changes. So, for a little while longer, continue simply accompanying the breath. Notice each inhalation arriving. Notice each exhalation completing itself. Without effort, one breath gives way to the next. No two are exactly alike. One might be slightly deeper, another a little shorter, one smooth, another uneven. The body's quietly teaching us something. Everything changes. Nothing remains exactly as it was a moment ago. The breath changes, sounds change, thoughts change, sensations change. Life itself is always moving. We don't usually notice this because the mind prefers fixed ideas. My breathing, my body, my mood, my day. Yet, when we become interested, we discover movement everywhere. Not because we've created it, but because we've begun paying attention. There can be something deeply reassuring about this. If experience is always changing, then no difficult moment lasts forever. No pleasant moment can be held forever either. Life continues unfolding, one moment giving way to the next. Mindfulness allows us to move with that unfolding rather than struggling against it. So listening to the body, without leaving the breath behind, notice now that breathing is taking place within a body. Feel the weight of your body resting where you are, the contact between your feet and the floor. The touch of clothing against your skin, maybe the warmth of your hands, the coolness of the air on your face. There's no need to search for sensations. The body is always offering itself to awareness. We simply don't often pause long enough to notice. Much of our lives is spent thinking about the body. We wonder whether it's healthy enough, strong enough, attractive enough, comfortable enough. We remember how it once felt. We imagine how it may feel in the future. Mindfulness invites us into something much simpler, to experience the body directly from the inside, without immediately judging or evaluating it. The body has a quiet honesty. When we're tired, it tells us. When we're anxious, it often speaks before the thinking mind has found the words. Shoulders tighten. Breathing becomes shallow. The stomach contracts. At other times, the body tells us something entirely different. The ease of walking, the warmth of sunlight, the comfort of sitting quietly. The body is always communicating. The question is simply whether we're listening. So for the next minute or two, let awareness rest with the body as a whole. Breathing, sitting, living. If one sensation naturally becomes more noticeable than the others, allow awareness to rest there. No need to wonder whether it should be present. It already is. Simply know it, then notice what happens next. Receptive awareness. You may discover that awareness has a natural flexibility. For a few moments, it rests in the body, then a sound comes forward. Maybe a bird outside the window, the hum of a fan, a passing car. Without making any effort, awareness knows the sound. When the sound fades, the breathing and breath quietly returns to the foreground. Or maybe a sensation in the body becomes more vivid. A feeling of warmth, a point of pressure, a slight ache. Awareness meets that as well. Nothing needs to be forced, nothing needs to be held. Experience unfolds, awareness accompanies it. There's a gentleness in this that's easy to overlook. Many of us have spent our lives believing that attention must always be directed, managed, or controlled. There certainly are times when that's useful. If we're learning a new skill or solving a difficult problem, concentrated attention is invaluable. Mindfulness includes concentration, but it's not limited to it. There's another way of paying attention, a receptive way, an interested way. Rather than trying to decide what deserves our awareness, we begin to trust that experience will reveal what most needs to be known. Think of sitting quietly beside a lake. You don't decide whether the next ripple will appear, you simply notice it. The lake reveals itself. Experience is much the same. The more quietly we observe, the more naturally it begins to unfold. Perhaps this is one reason mindfulness often feels like coming home. We spend so much time, so much of our lives, trying to make experience conform to our wishes. Meditation offers us a brief holiday from that effort. For a little while, we don't have to improve this moment before we're willing to inhabit it. We simply receive it exactly as it is. Feeling tone. As we continue sitting together, I'd like to invite you to notice something even quieter. Every experience carries a certain flavor. Some moments feel pleasant, others feel unpleasant. Many are neither one way or the other. They're just simply ordinary. Notice, without searching too hard, what this moment feels like. Perhaps there's a comfort in sitting, maybe discomfort. Perhaps nothing stands out at all. Whatever you discover is perfectly fine. The purpose is not to classify experience. The purpose is simply to become acquainted with it. The early Buddhist teaching called this quality feeling tone. It's not the same as emotion, it's something similar and simpler. The immediate taste of experience before we begin thinking about it. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. It happens so quickly that we usually miss it. Yet it quietly influences much of our lives. A pleasant experience appears. Almost immediately there's a movement toward it. Stay a little longer. An unpleasant experience appears. Almost immediately there's another movement. I wish this would go away. A neutral experience appears. Often the mind simply looks elsewhere. None of this is a problem. It's simply how the human mind has learned to respond. Mindfulness allows us to notice these movements before they carry us away. The pleasant remains pleasant. The unpleasant remains unpleasant. What changes is that we begin to see our relationship with them. And in that seeing, there's often a little more space, a little less urgency, a little more freedom. Perhaps you can explore this for yourself. If the chair feels comfortable, simply know it. Simply know comfort. Notice whether the mind wants to hold on to it. If there's a discomfort somewhere in the body, simply know discomfort. Notice whether the mind begins telling a story about it. You don't have to stop the story. You don't have to continue it. Just simply notice that it's happening. Experience and story. This is one of the quiet gifts of mindfulness. We begin to distinguish between what is actually happening and the stories we immediately begin telling about what is happening. The distinction is gentle, yet it can change the way we live. A pain in the shoulder may simply be a pain in the shoulder. Then the mind quietly adds, oh, this shouldn't be happening. How long will this last? What if it gets worse? Soon we're no longer experiencing the shoulder, we're experiencing the story. Now the story may be true or it may not. Mindfulness doesn't ask us to decide, it just simply invites us to notice the difference. The same is true of pleasant experiences. The warmth of the sun on your face, the laughter of a child, a satisfying conversation. Almost immediately the mind whispers, oh boy, I hope this lasts, or I wish every day were like this. Again, nothing has gone wrong. This is simply the mind doing what minds do. Mindfulness is not trying to silence the mind. It's helping us become intimate with its habits. And intimacy is very different from judgment. When we judge, we push away. When we become intimate, we understand. Perhaps this is one of the deepest movements in practice. We stopped treating ourselves as problems to be solved. We began meeting ourselves as human beings with curiosity, with patience, and little by little with kindness. Kindness in relationship. Kindness is sometimes misunderstood. We may think of it as trying to make ourselves feel better or persuading ourselves that everything is all right. This isn't the kind of kindness mindfulness points toward. The kind of awareness is much simpler. It's the willingness to remain present, to stay with experience long enough to understand it before trying to change it. Think for a moment about someone who's listened to you deeply. Maybe they offered very little advice. Perhaps they didn't solve your problem, yet they left the conversation feeling lighter. Not because your circumstance has changed, because you'd been received. Awareness offers us that same possibility. It receives experience before judging it. It listens before speaking. It notices before deciding. This may be one of the quiet reasons mindfulness can be so healing. Not because it removes pain, but because it changes our relationship to pain. The same is true of joy. We don't have to grasp it so tightly. We can simply enjoy it while it's here. As awareness becomes steadier, another question sometimes begins to arise. Not, what am I experiencing? We've already been exploring that. A different question begins to appear. How am I meeting this experience? There's no need to answer immediately. Simply let the question rest for a moment. How am I meeting this breath? How am I meeting this sensation? This thought? Perhaps with curiosity? Maybe with impatience? Perhaps with tenderness? Maybe with a quiet wish that things were different. Whatever you discover, simply include it. The purpose of this question is not self-evaluation, it's recognition. Sometimes we discover that we've been struggling with an experience without realizing it. All at other times, we discover that awareness has been quietly open all along. Neither discovery is better than the other. Each is simply another opportunity to understand ourselves a little bit more deeply. Over the years, we can come to appreciate the quality of our attention, that matters as much as the object of our attention. Two people may notice the same anxious thought. One immediately begins arguing with it. The other quietly recognizes anxiety is here. The thought may be exactly the same. The relationship is different. The small difference can change everything. It creates room to breathe, room to listen, room to respond rather than simply react. Maybe this is why mindfulness gradually feels less like a technique and more like a way of living. We begin carrying this quality of attention into ordinary moments. Someone speaks sharply to us. Before reacting, we notice the tightening in the body. A wave of disappointment moves through us. We know it's there. That knowing may last only a second. Yet in that second, something important has happened. It's become possible. We're no longer completely carried away by habit. There's space enough to choose, not always, not perfectly, but more often than before. So this is how practice quietly leaves the meditation chair or cushion. Not through determination, through familiarity. Awareness becomes a place we know how to return to again and again. As naturally as returning home at the end of the day. The breath as home. You may have noticed that throughout this time together we've returned to the breath many times. The breath has accompanied us from the beginning, not because it's the only object worthy of attention, but because it's always available. We can gradually come to think of the breath less as an anchor than as a home. We leave home to meet the world and we return home to rest. Then we leave again. Neither movement is more important than the other. If a bird begins singing outside your window, awareness naturally knows the sound. If a strong emotion arises, awareness naturally knows the emotion. If the body calls for attention, awareness knows the body. When that experience is past, the breath is still here, quietly waiting, never demanding, simply welcoming us back. There's great comfort in discovering that we always have somewhere to begin. Not because the breath solves our problems, but because it reminds us that we're here, alive, breathing, present. Sometimes that's all we need for this moment. And sometimes it's much more than we imagined. Just remain with that for a few moments. Simply breathing, simply sitting, allowing awareness to rest wherever it naturally settles. There's no need to hold the mind in place. If attention wanders, notice it. If it returns, notice that too. If the body feels comfortable, no comfort. If it feels uncomfortable, no discomfort. Nothing has to be excluded. Nothing has to be fixed before it can be known. Mindfulness in daily life. One of the quiet surprises of practice is that after a while, mindfulness begins appearing when we least expect it. You may be standing at the kitchen sink washing a plate. Warm water moves across your hands. The plate feels smooth beneath your fingers. Sunlight comes through the window. For just a moment, you're completely there. Nothing extraordinary has happened. You're simply present. Or maybe you're walking from the parking lot into a grocery store. Without intending to meditate, you notice your feet touching the ground. You feel the movement of your legs. A cool breeze crosses your face. You hear someone laughing in the distance. For a few seconds, there's nowhere else to be. The future is not asking for your attention. The past is quiet. There's only walking. Those moments often arrive without our planning them. The practice has begun to accompany us. It no longer belongs only to the minutes we spend sitting quietly. It begins finding us in the middle of ordinary life. Sometimes you can think that this is one of the most encouraging signs of practice. Not that the meditation becomes deeper, but that life becomes more available. The ordinary begins to reveal itself. The first sip of coffee or tea or water in the morning. The familiar sound of a loved one's voice. Rain against a window. A child's hand reaching for yours. The warmth of a favorite sweater on a cool morning. None of these experiences becomes meaningful because mindfulness transforms them. They become meaningful because they were already part of a life that deserved our attention. Mindfulness simply helps us receive what has always been given. Meeting difficulty. Of course, life doesn't offer only pleasant moments. There are days when the body hurts, days when disappointment arrives unexpectedly, days when the mind feels heavy, days when uncertainty seems to touch everything. Mindfulness was never intended only for peaceful moments. It was meant for those moments as well. Perhaps especially for those moments. When something difficult enters our lives, our first impulse is often to make it disappear. Sometimes that's wise. We can relieve suffering. If we can do that, we should. If someone needs our help, we help. If something can be repaired, we repair it. Mindfulness never asks us to become passive. It simply reminds us that before we respond wisely, we first need to see clearly. There are also many situations that can't be changed immediately. Waiting for medical results, living with illness, grieving someone we love, growing older, watching a child struggle, feeling uncertain about the future. No amount of wishing makes these moments disappear. What mindfulness offers is not escape, it offers companionship. Instead of facing the moment alone, we discover that awareness can remain with us. Breath by breath, step by step. Sometimes that quiet companionship is enough to carry us through we once felt unbearable. There certainly can be times when we want meditation to remove uncertainty. Instead, it can teach us how to live with uncertainty, not all at once, not heroically, just simply one day at a time, one breath at a time, one conversation at a time. Looking back, we can realize that what changed was not life. Life remained beautifully unpredictable. What changes was the confidence that awareness can meet whatever life brings. Not perfectly, not without fear, but faithfully. That confidence doesn't appear suddenly. It grows and maybe grew in the same way a friendship grows, by returning again and again. Over time, awareness can become, maybe has become, less like a practice we remember to do and more like a quiet companion who'd been walking beside us all along. Maybe this is why mindfulness has endured for so many centuries. It doesn't promise a life without difficulty. No practice could honestly make that promise. Instead, it points toward the possibility that we need not face difficulty without awareness. And awareness has a remarkable capacity to remain present even when the mind is uncertain, even when the heart is breaking, even when we don't know what comes next. Perhaps this is one of the quiet forms of courage, no pretending that everything is fine, not denying pain, simply remaining present long enough for wisdom to find us. Sometimes wisdom arrives as an answer, sometimes it arrives as patience, sometimes it arrives simply as the willingness to stay. And sometimes, for this moment, staying is enough. Stay with the breathing for a little while longer. There's no need for anything to make anything happen. Simply notice that this breath has arrived. Then another, and another. Life unfolds in much the same way. One moment arrives, it asks something of us, then it passes, another follows. We often imagine that we're living our lives in years and months. In truth, we live them one moment at a time. Mindfulness gently returns us to that simple fact. It asks very little, only that we be present for the moment we are actually living. Quiet awareness. Maybe notice how quiet awareness is. Thoughts have a voice. They comment, they compare, they remember, they anticipate. Awareness does none of those things. It simply knows a sound, a sensation, a breath, a thought, a feeling. It knows without arguing, without rushing, without needing to improve what it receives. There's something deeply trustworthy about that. Not because awareness always tells us what to do, often it doesn't, but because it allows us to see clearly before we act. Many of the difficulties we create for ourselves don't arise from experience itself. They arise because we react before we've fully seen what's happening. Mindfulness gives us the gift of one small pause, sometimes only a second. Yet a second can be enough. Enough to make and take one conscious breath. Enough to recognize that anger is present before words are spoken. Enough to notice fear before it quietly becomes certainty. enough to listen a little longer before offering an opinion. These are small moments, yet our lives are shaped by small moments far more often than by dramatic ones. Perhaps you've noticed that we've not been trying to achieve any special state here. There's been no perfect breath, no perfect posture, no perfect meditation. Some moments have probably felt settled, others perhaps distracted. Both belong. The purpose of mindfulness is not to produce a particular experience, it's to develop a different relationship with whatever experience is already here. That realization can be surprisingly liberating. If calm appears, we know calm. If restlessness appears, we know restlessness. If joy appears, we know joy. If sadness appears, we know sadness. Awareness doesn't insist that one experience is acceptable and another is not. It receives them all. Like the open sky receiving changing weather. Clouds drift through, rain falls, the wind rises, then the sky clears again. The sky is not harmed by the weather. In much the same way, awareness has room for the changing weather of our lives. There are bright mornings, stormy afternoons, long seasons of uncertainty, unexpected moments of delight. None of them remain forever. Each deserves to be met fully while it's here. As we sit together, perhaps notice the overall quality of your mind at this moment. Not the particular thoughts, not the specific sensations, simply the atmosphere. Is the mind quiet, busy, curious, tired, open, restless? There's no need to search for the right word. The purpose is not to describe the mind perfectly, it's simply to become familiar with it. Sometimes we wake in the morning and everything feels light. On another day, the world seems heavier. The circumstances outside us may be much the same. The quality of the mind has changed. Recognizing this can be deeply helpful. So instead of saying, I'm impatient, perhaps we begin noticing impatience is present. Instead of, oh, I'm anxious, maybe anxiety is here. This may seem like a small shift in language, yet it reflects a much deeper shift in experience. The feeling is no longer the whole of who we are. It's become something awareness can gently hold. This doesn't distance us from our humanity. It allows us to meet it more kindly. We stop fighting every passing state of mind. We become interested in it. We learn from it. Then when it changes, as all mind states do, we allow it to change without needing to cling, without needing to push away. There's a quiet freedom in discovering that awareness is larger than any single moment, larger than this thought, larger than this emotion, larger than this disappointment, larger even than this joy. Experience continues changing. Awareness continues receiving. Again and again, moment after moment, like breathing itself, always beginning, always returning, always here. Perhaps before we come to the end of our time together, simply notice where you are, not where you hope to be, not where you think you should be, just here. This room, this chair, this breath, this body, this moment. There's something quietly honest about being exactly where we are. We spend much of our lives imagining that life will truly begin when certain conditions are met, when there's more time, when work becomes less demanding, when the kids are grown, when we retire, when our health improves, when we finally understand ourselves. Life has a gentle way of reminding us that it is always happening now. This ordinary moment has never been waiting for us to become ready. It's simply been waiting for our attention. So perhaps that's why mindfulness can feel both so simple and so profound. Nothing new has been added, nothing magical has appeared. We've simply slowed down enough to notice what's been happening and has always been quietly present. The rhythm of breathing, the language of the body, the changing weather of thoughts and feelings, the remarkable capacity of awareness to receive them all. Remembering presence. If someone were to ask what you've been doing during this time, you might be tempted to say, well, I've been learning mindfulness. I wonder if there's another way to say it. Maybe you've been remembering something. As children, many of us know how to become completely absorbed in the present. We watched insects move across the sidewalk. We listened to rain against the windows. We become fascinated by the shape of a leaf or the movement of clouds. Nothing about those movements needed to be productive. They were completely in themselves. As adults, life becomes more complicated. Responsibilities multiply. The thinking mind becomes wonderfully skilled at planning, organizing, remembering, and solving problems. Those are valuable capacities, and mindfulness is not asking us to give them up. It's simply reminding us that there is another way of knowing life, not through analysis alone, but through direct experience, through breathing, listening, feeling, seeing, being present. The thinking mind is an extraordinary servant. It's not always the best companion. Awareness offers another companionship. Quieter, more spacious, less hurried. Over time, we discover that the two can work together. Thinking helps us understand the world. Awareness helps us inhabit it. There's a sentence you can return to many times over the years, perhaps. Awareness is already here. Our practice is remembering to trust it. So often I and many of us, when we first encounter mindfulness, we assume we were trying to create awareness. Now it seems almost the opposite. Awareness has always been present. We knew it. It knows quietly childhood. It knew youth. It's accompanied every success and every disappointment. It's been present through times of confidence and times of uncertainty. It's watched the body change. It's watched thoughts come and go. It's watched countless emotions rise and pass away. Most of the time, we simply haven't noticed that it was here. The practice is not to manufacture awareness, it's to become familiar with a faithful companion who has never really left us. The realization has gradually changed the way we and I understand meditation. It's no longer thinking of meditation primarily as something we do. It's to think of the time I and we spend becoming reacquainted with awareness itself. Some days that acquaintance feels easy, other days it feels awkward. Some days the mind settles, other days it wanders endlessly. The friendship continues either way. We simply keep showing up again and again. So at this time, together, as it begins to draw to a close, notice one more breath. Not because it's the last breath of the meditation, simply because it's the breath, the only one that can ever actually be lived. Feel the body breathing. Notice the gentle movement of inhaling, the quiet release of exhaling. Nothing to improve, nothing to complete, only this living moment. Continuing afterward, when you leave this recording, mindfulness doesn't stay behind. It walks out into the rest of your day with you. Maybe you'll notice your hand reaching for a door handle. Maybe the warmth of a cup in your hands. Maybe the sound of someone's voice before you begin replying. Maybe the feeling of your feet touching the ground as you walk. None of these moments will announce themselves as important. Most will seem almost too ordinary to notice. Yet, this is where our lives unfold. Not in the memories we replay, not in the future we imagine, but in the ordinary moments that quietly become a lifetime. You don't have to remember everything we've explored together. In fact, I hope you don't try. Maybe it's just enough to remember one thing. Just that when you notice that you've wandered, pause. Take one breath. Begin again. Not because something has gone wrong, because beginning again is what awareness has always known how to do. And maybe, over months and years, those countless quiet beginnings will become something you no longer think about. They'll simply become the way you meet your life. One breath, one step, one conversation, one ordinary moment, received with awareness, lived with kindness, and trusted just as it is. So a final reflection. Before we part, I'd like to leave with one final reflection. Many people begin mindfulness because they hope it'll change their lives. I understand that hope. I began with hopes of my own. Over the years, we come to see that mindfulness rarely changes life the way we first imagine. The seasons still change. The body continues to grow older. People we love still experience joy and sorrow. Plans succeed, plans fail. There are mornings when we wake refreshed. There are mornings when we wake carrying worry before our feet touch the floor. Mindfulness doesn't place us outside those experiences. It invites us to enter them more fully. When we stop struggling quite so hard with the moments we've been given, we sometimes discover that it contains more wisdom than we first imagined. Not because every moment is pleasant, some are not. Not because every moment in every experience has an easy answer, many don't. But because awareness has a remarkable capacity to remain present when certainty disappears. That present is not passive. It's quietly alive. It listens, it learns, it waits. Then, when action is needed, it responds with a little more clarity and a little less haste. Maybe that's one way of describing wisdom. Not knowing everything, simply seeing clearly enough to take the next step. There's this temptation, especially when we're beginning, to ask ourselves, am I making progress? It's a natural question, but mindfulness has gradually taught us to ask a different one. Not, how am I progressing, but am I becoming a little more available to the moment? Do I notice a little sooner when I've become lost in thought? Am I a little kinder when I discover that I've wandered? Can I stay present for one more breath before reacting? Those are quiet questions. They rarely produce dramatic answers, yet they point toward a very real transformation, one that often happens so gradually we hardly notice it. Then, perhaps months from now, you find yourselves in the middle of an ordinary day. Someone says something unexpected. The body tightens, a familiar emotion begins to arise, and before habit carries you away, there's a brief moment of knowing. Just enough space to breathe, to listen, to choose. That moment may only last a second, and that second can gently change the direction of the next hour. Sometimes the next conversation, sometimes much more. So it's how mindfulness quietly enters a life, not through dramatic experiences, through ordinary moments remembered. If after listening to this recording you decide to continue practicing, keep it simple. Find a few moments each day to sit quietly. Allow the breath to become a familiar place of return. When another experience naturally asks for your attention, let awareness meet it. When it settles, allow yourself to return to the breath. Throughout the day, pause from time to time and feel your feet touching the ground. Notice one complete breath. Listen before speaking. Look before hurrying on. There's no need to be mindful every moment. No one lives that way. Simply remember that often enough, that awareness becomes a familiar companion. Each remembered moment strengthens the habit of return. Not through effort alone, through affection. We tend to return to places that feel like home. Maybe over time awareness itself begins to feel that way. A quiet home that travels with you wherever you go. So thanks again for allowing me to accompany you during this time. Excuse me. No talker, recording, or writing can give you mindfulness. No teacher can hand it to you. As best, we remind one another of something that's been quiet all along. From this moment forward, your own experience will be your greatest teacher. Trust it. Be curious about it. Meet it with patience. And when you forget, as every one of us does, don't imagine that the practice has ended. The moment you notice that you've forgotten, the practice has already begun again. So wherever life takes you tomorrow, or next week, or many years from now, you may remember from time to pause, to feel one breath, to inhabit one moment completely, to meet yourself with kindness, and to discover and again that awareness has been waiting patiently for you all along. May it become a trusted companion. May it help you meet both joy and sorrow with an opening heart. May it remind you that this ordinary life, exactly as it is worthy of your full attention. So thank you, and may your next breath be a gentle beginning.